broadcasting from the Unshackled studios in Melbourne. This is WilmsFront, brought to you by the Unshackled.net. Now here's Tim Wilms.
Hello everybody and welcome to this week's WilmsFront Snapshot news show, coming to you a day late on this Wednesday the 29th of July 2026 as my computer tech froze again last night. I could have brought the show to you, but there would have been various malfunctions. We are live on the WilmsFront YouTube channel. Hello to everyone in the live chat. It is 8 p.m. here in Melbourne, Victoria, where it was the first full day for the new Premier Ben Carroll in the job. After yesterday, the shit Premier was disposed, the witch was ditched. Jacinta Allan announced her resignation on Tuesday morning. This was despite on Monday writing to the Labor State Secretary saying that she would recontest the leadership of the Parliamentary Party, which under Labor Party rules, which was adopted after Kevin Rudd returned to the Prime Ministership in 2013. So that means that the Labor Party rank and file, they get a vote, and then it's weighted 50-50 with the caucus vote. This is probably about the only democracy that is in the Labor Party. They barely have pre-selections anymore for seats. So we are 4 months out from a state election. So 2 months consumed by a internal leadership contest. So Allan said that because this would consume time, she still claims that she would have won this ballot. She, of course, played the gender card and said she tried her best to gaslight, saying that to all the women out there, don't be deterred about what's happened to me. There's so much good that's happened in my career. And Julia Gillard has now put out a statement saying that she was the victim of sexism because there was both ditch the witch signs about them. But Allan, she cast one last spell, Irish style, in the caucus room yesterday. She co-signed the nomination form to run for the Labor leadership for her Attorney General, Sonia Kilkenny, the member for Carrum, which is not too far. It was the next election over from my one of Frankston. Now, of course, she said that she was resigning so there wouldn't be this 2-month leadership contest. And now she co-signs her socialist left ally to run against Ben Carroll. So journalists outside, it wasn't a soundproof room, they heard shouting and yelling. The caucus meeting went for 2 hours. I had on in the background, it's now called News 24, their rolling coverage. They must have had to hand back some of their broadcast equipment to Sky News UK because there was an audio malfunction for a bit where you could hear James Campbell from the Herald Sun in Melbourne, but you couldn't hear Laura Jays and Andrew Clennell. Now, the thing is, so the caucus meeting started at 10. Parliament was due to sit at 12, and they came out of that room at the last minute. Sonia Kilkenny withdrew her nomination, and Ben Carroll was elected unanimously, and Gabrielle Williams from the left. So there was a split within the left. The Transport Infrastructure Minister was elected as deputy, and they needed to get to Parliament because Jess Wilson, the Liberal opposition leader, was waiting to table a no confidence motion. And if they're not there, then the no confidence motion passes and we're in an early election. So in between the 12 p.m. and 2 p.m, when question time's due to begin, Ben Carroll had to duck out to Government House to get sworn in by the acting governor because the governor is overseas. Then he had his first press conference with his deputy, Gabrielle Williams, and it's not surprisingly his first announcement was that there would be a royal commission into the construction sector. And he later said today would have an exhaustive terms of reference, though we haven't seen it yet, when he's going to submit them to the governor. He's also promised to give IBAC, the independent broad-based anti-corruption body, follow the money powers now. The Jacinta Allan wanted to kick it until the end of 2027, so vote for me, and then I will legislate it. And then he said, I am not Dan Andrews or Jacinta Allan. He's from the right of the Labor Party, but they all support the woke agenda. I nearly said woke gender. Well, they do support the woke genders. This was one of his photos from his Instagram earlier this year at the Midsummer Carnival. There's been so many comments online about people saying he looks like a lesbian or transgender himself. Do we know if he actually has a dick? He has refused to commit to the suburban rail loop. He better make up his mind because tunnel boring machines are going to be underground on the sites next month. Today he was at the Kmart store where he had his first job to announce workplace protection orders which would ban the shoplifters and aggressive people from retail outlets, something else that Jacinta Allan dragged her heels on and pushed out, even though the Shop Distributive and Allied Union had wanted these. The ACT Labor government introduced these years ago. But obviously he was asked by the press pack on Tuesday, 6 weeks ago, you looked Jacinta Allan in the eye and pledged that you weren't after a job, that you wouldn't challenge her or ask her to resign. And he said that it's because he wanted to look his daughter in the eye to know that he was supporting a world-class premier. And his excuse was the circumstances have changed. A delegation of MPs came to me and said Jacinta Allan had lost the support of the majority of the caucus. He said that about 10 times. There should have been a counter on the nightly news. And the Liberal Party, they've already turned this into a attack ad, and you'll see this with One Nation ads as well, when they've apparently got candidates coming next week. We don't know whether they've got a leader coming as well.
For years, Ben Carroll stood by Jacinta Allan.
I've got a young daughter at home, and I couldn't be more proud to make sure she grows up knowing that I supported Jacinta Allan.
When the cost of living kept rising, he stood by her. When crime got worse, he stood by her. Then he looked her in the eye and gave her his word.
Are you going to ask her to step aside?
No.
Can you look her in the eye and say that?
I can look you in the eye and say that, Premier.
Today, he's trying to get rid of her. Labour. Divided, dishonest, distracted.
Now, it was genius of Channel 7's political reporter Paul Dowsley to get Ben Carroll to do that. He is one of the few mainstream media reporters who will actually respect Paul Dowsley. He's got tenacity, work ethic, a go-getter, and he got Ben Carroll to do that. And it's fair to ask the question now, when he looks at us voters in the eye and makes election commitments, how do we know that he's not just going to say, if he is elected in his own right, that the circumstances have changed? It's like Albanese. We've changed our position. Now, he's talked about a new direction, and of course, he made clear that he wasn't Dan Andrews or Jacinta Allan, thank goodness for that. But it's clear that he wants to de-Dan Victoria, kind of like in the Soviet Union, de-Stalinization, when Nikita Khrushchev took over. And of course, they took out Stalin's body from that display next to Lenin, and they just dumped him. And now Ben Carroll is refusing to commit to building Dan's statue. Now, Dan has given his support to Ben Carroll. Maybe that's a bit of a backhander, because he wants to basically move on from the Dan Andrews, Jacinta Allan era, even though he was at the cabinet table under both premiers. Could he leak from the cabinet to prove that he disagreed with a lot of their decisions? Of course, Dan Andrews, as premier, ruled Victorian Labor like a true dictator, and now there has been as you saw at the caucus meeting, shit show. When there's a power vacuum, they don't know how to run themselves. Of course, Jacinta Allan, she was no Dan spinner or gaslighter. She wasn't convincing when she tried to deflect something to be inappropriate for me to comment. She might have actually kept her job if she did call a royal commission into the big build, but maybe she was worried that she would go to jail based on what is going to come out. And we could actually finally see Dan go to jail, because we've seen through the constant Breaking Bad reporting that Jacinta Allan's office said allegedly to these contractors, look, just work with the union, and just wanted to placate them. The change in Premier has also occurred during the Glasgow Commonwealth Games that was supposed to be in Victoria. Jacinta Allan was the Minister for the Commonwealth Games. 200 million of Victorian taxpayers' money has been given to Glasgow to host the Games. Sophie Ellsworth, who is now News Corp Australia's Europe correspondent. She's had various positions, but I remember during the COVID lockdowns, she was basically the Dan critic in chief. She presented a fake novelty check from the Victorian taxpayers to some Glasgow Scots. The total cost of cancelling the Games was $589 million. And yes, Australians and Victorians are watching the Commonwealth Games. It's free to watch on Channel 7. And congratulations to Lachlan Kennedy for being the fastest white man in the world. He won silver but he was the only white man in the 100-meter sprint final. So he's an inspiration to all the white athletes out there. You can compete against the blacks who have a racial genetic advantage in fast sprinting. Another Jacinta Allan legacy is the first People's Assembly, which had its first sitting in the Legislative Council, along with some gum trees that they'd put there. And they were so self-indulgent, the maiden speeches in this race-based parliament. They're all on a full parliamentary salary in this fake parliament. One of the members is Andrew Thorpe, Lydia Thorpe's son. Now, he has his mother's name, even though obviously you inherit the name from the father. And of course, Lydia Thorpe's father is Ron Illingsworth, who is white, but she takes the name, as does her son, of the Aboriginal side. Of course, it's a very Aboriginal name, Thorpe. Another Jacinta Allan legacy, the $13 million machete bins. They were so successful that we still have machete attacks every weekend, and despite her tough bail laws, youth still getting bail, and despite her adult crime, adult time, they're still getting non-custodial sentences. So there is talk that he's got to make a lot of decisions in a quick amount of time. He hasn't even announced his full ministry yet. Ben Carroll could introduce mandatory sentences. He should just basically all crimes, adult crime, adult time, from basically 12 up is what I would support. And now the Ditch the Witch truck, which you can see that I've got the photo of to my right here. That was taken off the road by Victoria Police and slapped with a defect notice, claiming that the LED billboards breached its vehicle registration standards, and so the driver must present the truck to Vic Roads for a full inspection and strip its digital screen. It's kind of how Monica Schmidt's Reignite Democracy bus in 2020 got slapped with a defective notice by Victoria Police. Funny that they said they were only responding to complaints. Wonder where those complaints came from. But mission accomplished. The witch has been ditched. Now, of course, how the tables have turned in Victoria. The Labor Party is a divided internal mess with lots of bloodletting after the shit show caucus meeting. But the Victorian Liberal Party is completely united under leader Jess Wilson. It was interesting that around about midday Tuesday, after the Labor caucus meeting and had wrapped up, Moira Deeming announced that she had resigned from the Parliamentary Liberal Party. Also, another recent development, the Parliamentary Workplace Standards and Integrity Commission was weaponised against the Shadow Attorney General, James Newbury, the Liberal member for Brighton, finding him guilty of parliamentary misconduct because he posted on X that TikTok Jacinta Allan Victoria is coming for Labor with baseball bats. So there was 4 referrals to the state's parliamentary integrity watchdog amid concerns they included violent rhetoric. And so it took them 6 weeks. I mean, you could cut this, and found Mr. Newbury engaged in parliamentary misconduct by failing to create a safe and respectful workplace. And because he named the Premier and the posts were associated with acts of violence. Well, he's doubled down. So you posted, in case you missed me saying it the first time, Victorians are waiting with baseball bats to vote, and no Labor appointed public servant should have the right to tell any Victorian they gagged from saying that. It actually came into Australian political discourse is when the Federal Labor Party was reduced to 2 seats in Queensland at the 1996 federal election, when Paul Keating was voted out in a landslide. The Queensland Labor Premier at the time, Wayne Goss, who shortly after that lost power by losing a by-election, said voters were waiting for Labor with baseball bats. Of course, they're not real baseball bats. It's a metaphor, just like Jacinta Allan wasn't physically knifed by Ben Carroll and there wasn't blood over the party room walls. It's not real blood. Night of the Long Knives. Of course, that is. I'm surprised. I was surprised actually we're still allowed to use that analogy. I actually heard Sherry Markson use Labor's Night of the Long Knives. Of course, that is the history of that goes back to the Nazi purge of 1934 against Ernest Romm's essay, The Night of the Long Knives, when he was arrested and executed along with other SA leaders. So that's still in use as well, the Night of the Long Knives.
This is WilmsFront, brought to you by the Unshackled.net.
I can see viewers in the chat, but not many. But, I mean, I can see people watching, but not many of you are commenting. So please let your thoughts be known. So last weekend, well, it was Thursday, Friday and Saturday. It was the 50th Labor National Conference. They hold it every parliamentary term. It started with an escalator malfunction at the Adelaide Convention Centre. Albanese nearly had another fall. The escalator changed its position, though he didn't claim it was a conspiracy like Donald Trump did at the United Nations, even though the camera showed that Trump's own staffer clicked the emergency stop. But in Adelaide, it was a full breakdown, kind of like Labor is doing to the nation. It was broken most of the weekend. Luckily, his teleprompter didn't malfunction like Donald Trump's did at the UN. He claimed that he was sabotaged. The conference itself was carefully stage managed to minimize public debates and dissent on the conference floor. Basically, Albanese has turned into Dan Andrews, now ruling the Federal Labor Party and the caucus with an iron fist. Former Industry Minister Ed Husic, who's a Bosnian Muslim, his push to recognise claims of genocide in Gaza were shut down, as was another floor debate for a support for a gas export tax. Instead, a joint motion by Jewish Labor MP Josh Burns and son of Palestinian refugees, the MP for Cornwall, Bassem Abdo, which condemned Hamas and also the expanded Israeli settlements in the West Bank. Also added to the Labor Party's national platform was to expand assisted dying through telehealth services. How do you assist someone dying over the phone? How close are we to the suicide booths that are featured on Futurama? I mean, are they going to replace all those old phone boxes? And they also passed a resolution to mandate superannuation contributions for all teenage workers, which, well, it's supposedly for our retirement, but as Anthony Albanese and Jim Chalmers have said, it's a national asset that they want to use to invest in their pet projects. We can't actually access what is technically our money, but they're allowed to use it. Speaking of money, Labor held multiple fundraisers on the sidelines of the conference. There was the Federal Labor Business Exchange, where lobbyists and business executives paid $12,000 a ticket for 15-minute multiple meetings with ministers in what is called political speed dating. So basically, the lobbyists they switch every 15 minutes and meet a new minister. So this $12,000 ticket was on top of the membership of the Federal Labor Business Forum, where fees start at $33,000. So there obviously would have been lots of business leaders who were executives, lobbyists who would pay a lot more. Then there was a gig by Home Affairs Minister's Tony Burke's band, Left, Right Out, which had ticket prices of $1,000 at a local Adelaide hotel. Taylor Swift is cheaper. I mean, wasn't Peter Garrett and Midnight Oil still available? But there would be more people willing to pay an exorbitant amount to see the 77-year-old ex-Labor minister perform at a local concert. What are some of Tony Burke's band's hits? ISIS Brides, Here They Come. And of course, the latest, we don't know if Dr. Jihad, as he is known, he's apparently the Albanese government knowing he's alive for 3 years and he could be released from an Iraqi jail and come back here. That is probably what is the most likely scenario at the moment, given the recent history of letting all these ISIS brides back. And of course, the ones in Victoria have got bail. But the fundraiser that Anthony Albanese attended that has seen the most scrutiny, well, it was one that Dan Andrews also attended. So that occurred last Monday, the 20th of July, hosted by Felix Lee at his family's $40 million Point Piper mansion in Sydney. That's the same suburb that Malcolm Turnbull lives in. I don't know if they're how close they live to each other. So attendees were expected to donate about $10,000 a head to the Labor Party. It was disputed that $1 million was raised. That was first reported in the AFR's Rear Window, but they said it was close to $100,000. I don't know if they were aiming for $1 million. Now, Felix Lee's father is the Chinese-born Australian billionaire property developer Philip Dong Fang Lee, who the Australian Taxation Office is investigating. They suspect him of using dishonest means to move vast sums of money from China to Australia over several years to fund his Australian business, property and gambling activities. Now, Albanese, he has tried to just shut it down, saying that he attends a lot of dinners and that he doesn't talk about private dinners. And he said he's held a number here in Adelaide during the conference. Yeah, we don't doubt you have. Yet the Labor Party has the nerve to bang on about Pauline Hanson receiving donations from Gina Rinehart. There was a lot of focus on One Nation in Albanese's conference address. Pauline Hanson has just updated her register of interests. It's on the Parliament register, which shows that Gina Rinehart did pay for the Sicily trip and her to attend the Dolce & Gabbana fashion show. There is also now the ABC after refusing to apologise to Gina Reinhart after one of their Race Around the World contestants, Kate McGuinness, made a video talking about sticking a stick up Gina Reinhart's arse. I won't tell the full thing. Now, Gina Reinhart and Hancock Prospecting have demanded an apology. The ABC has refused, defending it as satire, though they now have referred it to the ABC so-called independent ombudsman. But of course, because Gina Reinhart is a woman of the right and she's a billionaire, then this was put to air. It wasn't deemed sexist or misogynistic. Well, what? Because it was a woman saying about it about another woman. And it's quite interesting, the ABC defends this sort of so-called free speech and as satire, yet they haven't really been defending Pauline Hanson's right to free speech. She lost her appeal in the full bench of the federal court. It's against Maureen Faruqi after the federal court found she breached 18C of the Racial Discrimination Act by telling her to piss off back to Pakistan. After she said after Queen Elizabeth died that she could not mourn the leader of a racist colonizing empire. And of course, Pauline Hanson, she has been telling people to, if you don't like it here, go back to where you came from for the past 30 years. Now, Pauline has said that she's going to appeal to the High Court, which I think will probably be fruitless, same with Sal Grover's High Court appeal in Tickle versus Giggle. It's the law that needs to change. And again, the interesting that apparently some vulgar things, and it's describing the act of what was described about Gina Reinhart. It's basically describing an act of sexual violence. And that's apparently defended as free speech satire. Again, the left, if they didn't have double standards, they'd have no standards.
This is WilmsFront, brought to you by the Unshackled.net.
Another woman who lost an appeal was Carolee Smith. So the New South Wales Supreme Court upheld that she vilified two trans women, i.e. biological males, playing women's soccer by subjecting them to serious contempt and severe ridicule, and have upheld that she has to pay them a combined $95,000 in damages. And she obviously there will be a cost order against her, and pin a court scripted apology across her social media platforms. And she said that no court is going to compel her to say something that is a lie. Finally got some comments. Linda Hunter, great to see you there. You still try if you just show how deep the rock goes. Hello, Tim. Senator Slayer has said that I'm fogging and sweating. I don't think so. I'm just more parched. That's basically my only issue tonight. Now, this is the legislation that Carolee Smith was found to have vilified these trans women was the Anti-Discrimination Act 1977, New South Wales. Now, again, the Minns Labor government, they could amend it. The Kelly Sloan-led Liberal opposition could pressure them. but there doesn't seem to be much political pressure on Macquarie Street, which is where the New South Wales Parliament is. Also, one of the trans women has also separately successfully slapped Kirralie Smith with a apprehended personal violence order. Now, of course, this is what Kirralie Smith, the reason why she mentioned these trans women playing women's soccer is because it is unfair, and there's also obviously the safety issue of biological males, despite having taken all the hormones and that sort of thing. Most of them are still much physically larger and bigger than your average biological female. And the fact that this debate can be shut down because they can run to a tribunal or run to the police that their feelings have been hurt. Over in Western Australia, they recently passed a updated gender self-ID laws that are now under scrutiny as a male prisoner has transitioned to become a woman. I don't know what they've done to themselves. Again, this is the language that they use. So they're currently obviously incarcerated in men's prison, won a bid in the state administrative tribunal to transfer to a women's jail. So the Roger Cook-led government is now challenging this in the WA Supreme Court. We don't know who this inmate is or what their crime is. That is all suppressed. Then they're up on the Gold Coast. There is a trans woman, so biological male, is taking Queens of Pole Fitness and Dance at Helensville on the Gold Coast to the Queensland Civil and Administrative Tribunal after they were denied membership. So Gnomes Whitney said they were on holiday at the time, but this trans woman joined one of the free fitness classes, but according to a staff member, the whole vibe of the session had changed, and there was a mother and a young adult daughter becoming visibly uncertain. And so the response to this trans woman applying for membership, saying we were unable to accommodate the trans community at this time. Then 2 days later, they complained to the Queensland Human Rights Commission. The commission sought to mediate, forwarding to Miss Whitney a damages letter, which is for $30,000. But the thing is, there are other pole dancing studios in the Gold Coast which include all genders. Now, apparently pole dancing these days, it's not associated necessarily with stripping or striptease. Apparently it's a form of aerobics now, and like a form of fitness. So, but obviously there is the obvious history of that. So sort of when I read that apparently grandmothers and mothers and daughters apparently taking up pole dancing, that quite perplexed me. And sort of the whole, it's also Names Whitney said that it's women only, so they can practice not with the male gaze, because there's obviously they're in tight clothing where there can be wardrobe malfunctions. But the principle still is obviously that if a business wants to cater to only biological women, that is their right. And so she has started, the owner of Pole Fitness and Queen's Pole Fitness and Dance at Helensville on the Gold Coast. That's quite a mouthful. Started up a Give, Send, Go, which I will put in the chat. Sal Grover is backing her. So they've received $23,000 in donations. Their goal is $50,000. And the thing that got me as well is that the Queensland government says it supports the single-sex spaces, but says it's up to the federal government to change the Federal Sex Discrimination Act. But that is a cop-out because they can roll back the gender sex ID that was passed under the Palaszczuk-Miles government. They can amend the state's own anti-discrimination act as well to protect single-sex spaces. And now, obviously, Pauline Hanson has been big on protecting single-sex spaces, though she has copped some criticism from the TERFs for her comments saying domestic violence is a two-way street, that women can get aggressive and violent. We've just had a horrific case of a mother engaging in a murder-suicide of her daughter and baby. There's been a recent epidemic of mothers who have killed or been accused of killing their children. That is family violence. Now, Pauline Hanson is right that it's a two-way street. It doesn't, obviously the crime stats say one thing, but obviously when a woman tries to hit a man, the man can often overpower her because they're physically stronger. So it doesn't actually connect, and the man's not going to go to the police over that. And obviously there's a lot of male victims who are too ashamed to go to the police as well. So I would say Pauline Hanson, and you have to remember she's a domestic violence victim herself, and her personal advice was to women to leave. But there were these anti-domestic violence advocates who say, no, that's dangerous. So I was a bit confused. They're supposed to stay because it's safer and leaving's dangerous. So I was all a bit confused. But going back to Australia's gender agenda, doesn't matter which state and territory you live in, simply the act of misgendering can make you potentially the perpetrator of a civil or criminal offence. But in a jurisdiction where there is no gender self-ID, you're under no obligation to respect someone's pronouns. What happens? Well, we found out with this viral police body cam footage from the University of Central Florida, a misgendering meltdown by ex-student Jarrett J. Lee Vick in February 2025. You may have seen it, but I reckon there's, no matter how many times you like see it, it's just utterly hilarious.
Stop misgendering me!
What's the problem?
Why do you let those kids get away with this? They are not supposed to be here!
If you don't lower your voice, I am going to put handcuffs on you, and I'm going to take you to a Baker Act facility. You lower your voice.
Try it.
Are you threatening me? Can we get another unit to deal with Jay Lee here? He is having a breakdown.
Say! Just say the right pronoun!
What'd you say?
7351.
Get down on the ground right now.
No!
You're about to get sprayed.
No!
Get down on the ground right now.
Leave me alone!
I can come in there.
Leave me alone, please!
Okay, are you going to calm down?
I want to be away from him.
It's too late now. It's too late now. He's going to be taken away.
Say!
Bailey, you need to stop.
It's taken.
I just want to get away from him.
I understand that.
He needs
Say! Say! Stop misgendering me! Just say she!
Alpha 73.
Please step in. Watch your head.
Do not push me.
Now that is easily the biggest misgendering meltdown in the history of the internet. Even bigger than the original one was the GameStop ma'am. It is ma'am. And then there was the sequel, that woman at the car dealership who says, "I'm a fucking sir." But that is, it almost seems like it was Cobber Cab playing another character. Now, if you don't know who Cobber Cab is, he was a regular on Gavin McInnes's shows. He went viral with this angry rant saying gingers do have souls, and then he transitioned to be Claire Cab, and that's when Gavin had that hilarious line that said, if you're going to transition, I'd appreciate a bit of effort. Now, the reason why this has come out now is because I'll put it up on the screen. He actually did the meme. He's with the the blue hair there and the cartoon meme there, but it may have been a wig because this is Jarrett Vick's mugshot. And where did his long hair go? So he was charged with battery on a law enforcement officer and a resisting officer with violence. So University of Central Florida Police, so university campuses have their own police departments, responded to a reported stolen vehicle and disturbance involving juveniles. This is what set him off initially. And he was already yelling at security, other people, and then he refused police commands, resisted, allegedly punched, kicked, tried to retreat. Officers had to use pepper spray and a taser, and so has also been charged with disorderly conduct as well. Now, it's interesting here. It says Vick has pleaded not guilty, but reports indicate the case is closed. How does that work? But yes, Florida has no gender self-ID laws anymore under Governor Ron DeSantis. They still have a gender on their driver's license. It comes with your biological sex, as does your passport at the federal level as well. So all they can do in the states like Florida is just tuck a tantrum, but when they fuck around, they find out. But this is the whole thing about this accommodating, being forced to accommodate, that it's allowed, these laws have allowed mentally ill people to exploit them but not in the state of Florida and not in a lot of states in the United States.
This is WilmsFront, brought to you by the Unshackled.net.
The same thing can't be said about the state of Minnesota, where Shyla Hendricks was found guilty of disorderly conduct for calling a Somalia man, Shah Mark Omar, the N-word as he filmed her in a playground after she called an 8-year-old Somali boy the N-word for taking a applesauce sachet tube, whatever those things are, you know, those sort of tube things that kids have. I can't remember the name, from her diaper bag at the park in Rochester, Minnesota in April 2025. This is what transpired.
Did you call him a nigger, the child?
The fuck you talking
Did you
about?
call the child the nigger word?
None of your fucking business.
It is my own business. You call him a nigger? Okay, why don't you have the balls to say it right now again?
Fuck you, nigger.
Okay.
Nigger.
All right, that's what you say.
You don't go digging through people's shit, you dumb fuck.
Nobody dig into your shit.
A little fucking kid just did, you dumbass.
That little kid, you call him a nigger?
Yeah.
The little child?
What if he acts like one, he's gonna...
Are you about to hit him? You chase him here?
He took my son's stuff.
So that gives you the right to call the child, 5-year-old, a nigger, the N-word.
If that's what he's gonna act
That's
like.
what you're gonna call him.
That's what he's gonna act like.
You know, that's a hate speech. And you can be recorded for that.
I don't give a shit.
Huh.
Fuck off.
Okay, we'll see about that, what the internet has to say about you.
So she was charged with Shyla Hendricks' disorderly conduct. And this was the directions that the Assistant Chief Judge, Krista Daly, gave to the jury, and they deliberated for about 9 hours. This is what she looks like, and she's on the bench until 2031. So her directions to the jury was that inherently likely to provoke a violent reaction or incite an immediate breach of the peace for whom the words are addressed. So basically she was saying to the jury that it's completely justified for black people to be violent in response to being called the N-word, that their violence is justified. Now, that boy wasn't 5 years old. He was 8 years old, apparently has autism, and that he was going through the diaper bag to explore things. Now, as you could see, he was back on the playground. He didn't seem too fazed. The boy's father was just out of frame. And apparently the authorities contacted the wrong Somali family originally. Now, it's worth mentioning that Sharmak Omar, he didn't actually testify. And now she was found not guilty of calling the boy the N-word, but was found guilty of disorderly conduct for calling Sharmak Omar the N-word, even though he was the one who started filming her, following her, provoking her to say it. He even said it himself. But of course, he has an N-word pass. But the thing you have to remember is that in Mina Somalia, as that it's called now, these Somalis, yes, they're black, but they're not actual African Americans, is that they're not the descendants of slaves. They don't have ancestors who are called that word. So they don't, it can be argued that their ethnicity doesn't have the same, the word doesn't have the same historical meaning to them. Now, the judge, Krista Daly, gave Shyla the maximum penalty, which was a 90-day suspended jail sentence, 1 year probation, 200 hours of community service, and a $1,000 fine. Now, a bit of more information about this Shamek Omar. So in January 2022, he and another Somali man allegedly spent 2 days raping an underage foster care runaway in a trailer, keeping her falsely imprisoned. But in March 2025, all charges were dismissed in the interest of justice. Rewind to April 2020. That's when Shamek Omar, along with another Somalia friend, a separate from his alleged co-raper, committed a violent assault in the street. Omar threw a rock at a car and then attacked and beat a 16-year-old driver. A bystander tried to intervene, but Omar's accomplice threatened him with a knife. And for this, Shamek Omar was charged merely with disorderly conduct for hurling a deadly weapon at a vehicle and then beating a teenager with his criminal pal and held off onlookers at knife point. So he only got a $200 fine for violence. This is the Minnesota statute here of disorderly conduct. Whoever does any of the following in a public or private place, including on a school bus, knowing or having reasonable grounds to know that it will tend to alarm, anger, or disturb others. And number 3 is engaged in offensive, obscene, abusive, boisterous, or noisy conduct in offensive, obscene, or abusive language, tending to arouse alarm, anger, or resentment in others. This is basically trying to get around the First Amendment, which we're told that we don't have the First Amendment here in Australia because we've got to defend multiculturalism and you shouldn't have the right to, for example, say the N-word in public. So they're implying that the First Amendment gives you the right to say the N-word in public. That is the First Amendment. This is why the United States also cannot ban the Nazi swastika or ban the Nazi salute. Now, this should be taken all the way to the Supreme Court, because if this is allowed to stand, then it's going to continue to be used. And like I said, the way that this is worded, that anyone who says offensive speech, which is protected by the First Amendment, they can just charge them with this. We have also these types of laws here in Australia. They've tried to charge the former NSN members with various engaging in a grossly offensive behavior. And in my opinion, Republicans should make this a midterm issue. We haven't heard any Republicans say that this is a direct attack on the First Amendment. Charlotte Hendricks, she represents a lot of things. So she represents somebody who just doesn't give a zero fucks anymore. She represents black fatigue. And I don't believe she's a racist. I've said this previously. She said she called the kid that word because he was behaving like one. And of course, if you can use whatever slur you want against white people, like there's what is it, white trash. Like obviously that's not used. That's used against a particular type of white person. It's not used against all white persons. So again, that's a subjective one that you can apply in particular circumstances. But of course we have in Victoria the Sam Kerr clause that you can't be racist to white people, that the anti-vilification laws, they're not meant to protect those who have institutional power, i.e. white people. But Donald Trump he's busy. That's not focused on the First Amendment. So he had take two of the White House correspondence dinner where he announced his intention to run for a fourth term, because he said he won in 2016, 2020 and 2024 and put on a Trump 2028 hat. Of course, we had the fake news back here in Australia. 9 News claimed that Trump's announcing that he's going to run for another term. The White House Correspondents' Dinner, it's meant to be a joke. But of course, when it comes to Donald Trump, just twist however you want. And now he spoke at Lindsey Graham's funeral. I can't believe that he became one of Trump's closest confidants. Trump delivering the eulogy, he told the story how about he gave Lindsey Graham's phone number out during a Trump rally in 2016. Though he did say that Lindsey Graham, he never saw a war that he didn't like. And, he was a big fan of the war in Iran. And going further, Donald Trump hosted Benjamin Netanyahu at the White House and also Vladimir Zelensky. Did anyone see that Laura Loomer, who says that she's an administration insider, traveled to Ukraine, spent an hour to interview Vladimir Zelensky? So you basically have she's mask off neocon now. There is now a huge neocon lobby for Trump to continue to fund Ukraine. In fact, they attacked a Iranian ship in the Caspian Sea, Ukraine, and Ukraine's also contributing to higher petrol prices by attacking Russian oil tankers. So war is destructive. Of course, there's the immediate loss of life, the poverty of the people. But of course, it all affects us here as well. So we've also had now Saudi Arabia officially joining the United States since the Houthis who are proxies, allies of Iran, attacking Saudi oil tankers in the Red Sea off the coast of Yemen, another key oil and transport shipping route. So we have here in Australia, the petrol prices basically jumped around 30 cents and it's going to go up another 16 cents on August 2 because the final tail of the fuel excise cut is coming to an end because Anthony Albanese and Jim Chalmers are addicted to your taxes. Donald Trump has also said that he's willing to give uranium to Saudi Arabia, but on multiple conditions, that they use it for civilian purposes and that they sign the Abraham Accords to recognize Israel. So he's wanting to have a art of the deal with Saudi Arabia. They were going to sign it until Hamas attacked southern Israel on October 7. Did anyone see that Boy George? He released a song which a lot of people say is AI generated, defending Israel. And I was sort of thinking to myself, a man who was convicted for chaining a male prostitute, falsely imprisoning him, he's not the sort of guy that I think you want to sort of like put out there as a champion of Israel. Just FYI, you can sort of you cannot like disavow his support, but you can just not bump it up.
This is WilmsFront, brought to you by the Unshackled.net.
It is exactly 2 years to the date, and I think the exact time, when Axel Rudakabana walked into a Taylor Swift-themed children's dance event in Southport and murdered Elise De Silva Agua, age 9, BB King, age 6, and Elise Stancombe, aged 8, injuring 8 other girls and the dance instructor and another businessman. He was sentenced to 52 years in prison because he couldn't get life because he committed this act of terror 6 days before his 18th birthday. And remember, it wasn't until he pled guilty that it was revealed that he had an Al-Qaeda training manual in his room. Remember before, and this was, his mugshot wasn't released, which you can see on the right, until after he had pleaded guilty. We had the photo of him at age 12, the Welsh choir boy. Remember that, because he was born in Wales to Rwandan parents, so that made him Welsh, even though Southport is in England. So he developed a fixation on genocide and mass violence, was expelled from school for carrying a knife, had attacked other students, had tried to develop ricin, had been referred to the anti-radicalization PREVENT program, though PREVENT doesn't prevent much. Now he is going to be transferred from the maximum security Belmarsh prison to the Broadmoor Psychiatric Hospital because independent clinical professionals under the Mental Health Act conclude that Axel Rudakabana could not be managed safely in Belmarsh. Now, I looked up, is it possible for someone to escape from Broadmoor? I asked Grok and said not of a patient like Axel Rudakabana, who would basically be in the maximum security, not be allowed to use the recreation room. If he did escape, then it'd be a real life Michael Myers situation, a potential massacre event. And if you had a psychologist, a doctor like a Sidney Loomis, who was Michael Myers' doctor in the Halloween series, certainly wouldn't have recommended be transferred from maximum security prison to a psychiatric facility. In the Halloween 2018 movie, Dr. Sidney Loomis says that my suggestion is termination, that his vitals no longer function, and incinerate the body. It needs to die. And Rupert Lowe, leader of Restore, has said that he supports the execution of Axel Rudakabana. The lawyers for the victims' families and the prison officers association have said that Axel Rudakabana is manipulating the system. It's an insult to those girls. And in prison, he did throw boiling water at a prison officer. So he is still a highly dangerous prisoner, should be in solitary confinement, and when he has to be removed from his cell, basically put into as many restraints as possible, and basically have the Hannibal Lecter mask there. But again, quoting Dr. Sidney Loomis, there is no point keeping evil alive. He is pure evil, like Michael Myers. And remember, this is July 2024 was 4 weeks after Keir Starmer became Prime Minister, and those judges with their wigs gave Brits like Lucy Connolly a multi-year jail terms for posting on social media in the aftermath. This was, again, Keir Starmer had been the director of the Crown Prosecution Service. So this basically was, this horrific thing was, it just showed all the failures with the various authorities, justice system, and, well, his response. It's why his premiership never recovered. Now, we have a new Prime Minister now, Andy Burnham. Katie Hopkins calls him the king of casual, king in the north, the number 10 in the north. His dog, he has the unfortunate name of Axel. Luckily, we don't have a mass murderer here in Australia called Toto, because that is Anthony Albanese's dog, Toto. So the Junior Justice Minister, Sally Jamieson, has said that Axel Rucabana would be returned to prison as soon as possible, and that high security hospitals are not ordinary hospitals and function more like prison hospitals with very stringent conditions, and he would not qualify for benefits there. She's actually a former prison officer, so she certainly should have sympathy with the Prison Officers Association. Now, from an actual heinous criminal to another person who was a victim of two-tier justice. Remember Andy Harper, that a white lad in Birmingham who was in that altercation where there was pushing and shoving with that group of colour, yet that high-pitched, hysterical female officer went straight for him and he punched her out of instinct. Now, the West Midlands Police, despite them defending the officer's actions, the local prosecution has dropped the charges. So this, again, highly embarrassing for all of their defence of this hysterical officer. They wasted all this time trying to prosecute him for the charges to be dropped. Now, over in Berlin at its annual Pride Parade, there was a Islamist van terror attack. Germany has become infamous for Islamists driving into various public events with vans. So one woman, a 65-year-old from Poland, was murdered. 29 others were injured. So the terrorist name is Abdul Balut. And a bit about his history. Again, this could have been prevented. He's a 21-year-old German citizen of Lebanese descent, born in Berlin in 2005. He's a Berliner. He's a German. So he had known links to local Islamist circles, prior criminal convictions for assault and robbery as a juvenile. In 2025, he travelled to Lebanon with the aim of him joining Islamic State in Syria, was arrested in Lebanon and served a short sentence there related to incitement, returned to Germany where he was detained, but he was convicted in a juvenile court in 2026 of preparing serious acts of violence endangering the state, received a suspended sentence of 1 year and 10 months and was released weeks before the attack under supervision de-radicalization efforts that were later criticised as inadequate. So again, the so-called preventers didn't prevent a... Obviously, it's horrific, this woman being murdered. He has been shot and killed now after there was a manhunt. And there's the far left in Germany. There was one who hoped that they were hoping that it was a far right person and lamenting that, oh, the far right are going to weaponize this. The far right, if you want to use that term, wish that this didn't happen. We don't. None of us want any of this to happen. It's horrific. And now, Alternative for Deutschland, according to a poll of 60,000 German users of Romeo, which is a LGBTQ dating app, voting intention is the Alternative for Deutschland, the Nationalist Party, 28%. Obviously, it is led by a lesbian, or as Katie Hopkins pronounces, lesbian, Alice Werdle, who is married to a Sri Lankan Swiss woman. So she's a civic nationalist. Like it's a one nation party. It's not a far right ethno-nationalist party. The Green Party at 20%, though the Greens in Germany, they're not watermelons like they are in Australia, because they actually have a socialist communist party called Die Linke, which 6.5% of gays said they support. The Christian Democrats, 17.6% of gays, queers support them, 12.5% for the Social Democrats, and only 3.6% for the Free Democrats, which is like the Libertarian Party there. It'd be interesting to see the LGBT polling for One Nation here in Australia. Obviously, they've got several gays. There is obviously James Ashby, Pauline Hanson's chief of staff. There is Heston Russell, who's moved here in Victoria and is supporting One Nation. And of course, Jason Virgo, the One Nation MP in South Australia. And there was also a Islamist attack on Monday in northern Paris. 3 women were stabbed. A 31-year-old man had 2 kitchen knives, and he said that he was doing it for Allah. Like, you think, like, Pauline Hanson obviously was quite disturbed when she was in Britain, visiting Luton and Tower Hamlets, but Paris, Germany, it's even worse. I mean, look, in Sydney and Melbourne, like, as long as, like, if you're not in Lakemba in Sydney or not in Broadmeadows in Melbourne, it's not as pervasive like it is in Brussels in Belgium. That's another huge Muslim city in Europe.
This is WilmsFront, brought to you by the Unshackled.net.
Did you all enjoy getting your Oz alerts at 2 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time on Monday? So the only way to avoid it was to turn your phone off an hour beforehand and then keep it off for 24 hours. So I think wrapping it in tin foil or putting it in a bag. But it was supposed to blast for 10 seconds, but thankfully it wasn't as loud. And you could just like press the button on your iPhone and it would immediately stop. Now it's being rolled out properly in October. If you had an older phone or software, then you didn't get it. So if you have a Nokia, one of those old phones, maybe you didn't get it. So let me know in the comments if you got your Oz alert or you tried everything you could to avoid it. I mean, none of us, a lot of us couldn't even avoid Clive Palmer's text messages. Margot says she was the cooker who turned off phone for 30 minutes. Did you still get it after it? Margot says she didn't. So we had it at all those ads on TV and online warning us, and then the news, because they wanted, they need content during the day. They had a countdown to Oz alerts, and they had cameras out on the streets to film people getting the Oz alerts to hype up the drama. This was a recommendation of the Royal Commission in the aftermath of the Black Summer bushfires in 2019-20. We're one of the last nations to roll out this Oz alert system. Apparently there were reports that it disconnected some home internet. Luckily I wasn't at home, so nothing. I don't think it was responsible for a day later my computer going at a slower speed. It's been working good tonight, which is great. Hopefully next week I can be back on the regular time. Thank you so much for your company on this Wednesday evening. And now, of course, I cannot do all these Unshackled productions without your support. So if you want to support the Unshackled WilmsFront, then please consider supporting us on Substack. That is also where I send out alerts for upcoming Unshackled productions and reports from Tiger Mountain with Richard Wollstonecroft. There'll be another one coming out later this week. I also post new content on Telegram, Gab, X, and Facebook. Also, you can support us over on a premium membership on the unshackled.net/membership. Also, remember I'm a contributor at Reality Check Radio, and you can sign up to their weekday Ozbites newsletter at biteme.news. So you get that to your inbox 5 days a week, because RCR, remember, has hired several Australian contributors, such as Lisa Jane Spencer and Graham Hood. So it's great to have their presence in Australia. Obviously, I am a fortnightly contributor, my Wilms report, to Paul Brennan's breakfast program on Tuesday mornings. I wasn't on this week. I will be back on next week to talk about how Ben Carroll is going in the job. Will he have some more announceables in the next few days? We shall find out. We're in for an interesting ride here in Victoria with a new Premier and election coming up on November 28. 3-cornered contest with the Coalition, One Nation and Labor. The legislation to abolish the group voting tickets in the upper house is passing Legislative Council tonight, so there'll be no more preference whispering at this election. You will control your preferences, and of course I'll be covering it here as a Victorian intensely. So good night. Thank you so much again for your company. Watch out for your petrol. They're going up another 16 cents on August the 2nd, thanks to Albanese and Chalmers. Good night, everybody.
Thanks for tuning in to WilmsFront. Visit timwilms.com to view the archive of episodes, and keep visiting the unshackled.net to view all our shows, and to keep up with the latest real news and analysis.